giving positive emotions. And so for them, it may be to work on the numerator. Getting to specifics, I think that knowing the benefits of positive emotions, my advice is not to suggest that people think, oh, I just need to be positive and sort of will themselves into being positive. That, I think, can create toxic and unhealthy insincerity.
Actually, backlash.
Yeah, and a backlash. And sometimes a heavy-handed overanalysis, am I positive now? Where you're always questioning and therefore derailing any small and sort of tender shoot of positive emotions. A better strategy, I found, is to lightly create the mindset of positive emotions, and that is to be open and be appreciative, be curious, and be kind, but above all, to be real and to honor the circumstances that you're in, and if negative emotions are appropriate, to feel those too.
You make the case, though, in here from some of the evidence of the impact, for example, in facing serious illness. You dramatize how the way you go into that experience is dramatically influenced by the baggage you carry there.
Right, right. And again, what we learn from studying resilient people is that they somehow are able to avert falling down a downward spiral. That negative emotions, when potent, really pull us to insulate ourselves ever more from others. And positive emotions, in opening our awareness, actually allow us to connect to others and to benefit from sort of the healing power of community, and also help us find solutions and find goodness and celebrate goodness around us. So it's being able to face something as serious as an illness and still recognize what's good, not using the illness as the only lens through which you see the world, makes a tremendous difference in people's ability to cope, find solutions, and move on.
You find any difference here in age at all in your research?
Yeah. What has been shown is that, well, for decades, people have thought, well, people just have this entrenched negativity bias, that bad is stronger than good is one way it's been summarized. And yet, more recently, just in the last decade or so, researchers have discovered that there's a group of people who don't show that negativity bias strongly, and that's older adults. Typically people, around 70 and older. They show a positivity bias. And that's been fascinating to see the work on unraveling why that is so. In part, I think we thought all humans had a negativity bias because so much of psychology has been done with college students. It just, it's a fact of life. College students are around university campuses and are often studied. But when we have expanded the population of research participants, we discover new things all the time. And this wisdom of age, I think, is comes through experience and knowing that, actually there's more benefit to me, more growth for me if I turn away from the negative and towards the positive. And it really does, the research suggests that really is a deliberate choice among older adults to turn away from the negative and towards the positive.
Well, being in that category, I can tell you that lots of times it's the difference between seeing things as being in too great a hurry. Life isn't that fast. If you take a little more time, think about it, be a little more deliberate about it, and do it with a joyful heart. And I see all through here, though, you keep urging people, don't be so self-condemning. We have a tendency, even if we're not conscious of it, to be too hard on ourselves from time to time. And the other, of course, is self-love, the importance of that. But is that a really dangerous situation in most people?
Well, I think that our self-talk is a really potent source of our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, lots of things can spark positive and negative emotions, but the one that's with us frequently is our self-talk. And when our self-talk is critical and judgmental, that can really fan the flames of our negative emotions and really hasten this downward spiral. There's the antidote to that is self-compassion. A lot of times we think of compassion as just something that we might give to others who are suffering, and many of us have never quite learned how to apply that compassion to ourselves. Treat yourself as you would a good friend who is going through a hard time, and that can make a big difference in generating some of the hope and positivity that helps people move forward.
When you go out, as your publisher wants you to do, a book is popular like this book will be, what's the encounter you start with most people? They haven't studied psychology,
right.
But they all are sensitive about how they feel.
Right.
How do you go at an audience
right.
with that premise?
Right. Well, people resonate with the idea of emotions being very important to them. And the first connection people often make is power of positive thinking. What I feel that my unique contribution is to be able to point out the science that supports a lot of our intuitions about emotions. And for some people that will just reinforce what they know already. And for others who have more difficulty believing grandmother's wisdom or spiritual wisdom or things that are handed down just as folklore, they may be more convinced by science. So that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to have a contribution to this perspective that comes from a very different base. And what's inspiring to me is to see how often our ancient wisdom traditions coincide with what the science is showing us. But sometimes they don't coincide, and the science can help you know, well, which of these views is correct and which isn't. Sometimes they do coincide, and that's just a really satisfying connection to see.
Did you have any real surprises as this went along, as you studied human nature and human emotion?
Yeah.
What has been the real challenge to you?
The biggest surprise finding that we had was one that had to do with race and our ability to recognize faces across racial lines. One of my students had an aim to look at the effect of positive emotions on our ability to recognize people in general. And when he brought the data back to our laboratory meetings, we looked at them every which way, and it didn't quite look like the finding he was looking for was there. But when we broke the data down by whether the faces people were recognizing were of your own race or of a different race, we saw a tremendous effect of positive emotions on our ability to recognize people across racial lines. And that tells me that positive emotions, they're transient, but they can really help us build community and build connections across diverse communities. And what was stunning about this is that it wasn't just that the effect of this entrenched racial bias, which is viewed as typical of all people, is diminished a little bit. It's gone altogether. So it's like for that moment, race disappears.
Mm-hmm. You've collected a lot of information, and you've been working in different age ranges. Mm-hmm. But when you move over now to my generation, how will you set about doing these measurements? You said we don't show so much negativity. Well, I think that's come about because we've lived through it. Mm-hmm. But what will you be searching for?
Well, in my next projects, I do want to look at the age spectrum from midlife to old age, and try to understand from the older samples, what is it about past experience that allows them